Andrew Jarvis, your county's had more than its fair share of the effects of climate change in recent years. Do you think it's the greatest challenge of our time?
Indeed, I think it is. Yes, I think it's going to have a significant impact on our industry, and this is what we're talking about this afternoon. But I think it falls into two parts. I think there's the systems, the way that we go about our business, and there's the product, what we actually produce as to what we do. But the fundamental thing, I think that we're very limited within the construction industry as to what we can do if there is not a complete culture change within our society. If we are working in isolation and we are working against a tide of people or population which does not believe and does not understand what the consequences are, then it's going to make our life an awful lot more difficult. We talked about the comment about in the private sector in commercial development. Everything is price led. Until you get that sector, for instance, realising that climate change issues are important to the future and are taken into account in their investment strategies, it is going to be very difficult for the industry to actually develop new systems, new ways of working within this environment. We talked about capital cost. We talked about whole life cost. I would suggest actually we should have a whole life carbon footprint. When we are building our buildings, we should be looking at how much carbon is required to actually produce the materials which are going into that building, how much carbon we are going to be producing during the life of the building to actually get a whole footprint of that building, and that should be taken into account in our investment decisions. I think it is very difficult. You go and try and find out how much carbon there is embedded in a material product, and it is very difficult to get that information at the moment. And yet, if we, as an industry, put pressure on the manufacturers, then I suspect we might be able to get it. If they know that we've got to have it to buy before we buy their products, then I suspect it will be available. There's a lot of other information. We used to, with the health and safety information which you find now on products, we didn't have that 15, 20 years ago. It was only through pressure from the health and safety side of the industry which actually made us get that. Well, why shouldn't we put pressure on to know what the facts are with regard to the carbon impact of our materials? I know that I've got a carbon reduction commitment to meet, and I know it's going to cost my authority a lot of money if we don't achieve that. I also know there in fact are great benefits to us, that if we do achieve it and we exceed our targets as far as that's concerned, then we are going to win financially. So there could be some benefits to us if we take it seriously. I have got to persuade my members, I've got to educate my elected members, my councillors, to that fact, to make sure that our policies and our strategies take that into account. We already have climate change strategies within the authority to make sure that we are doing our best and we're working in a coordinated way. But I've got 300 head teachers out there in my county, all who have a degree of independent thinking, and all who wish to do their follow their own policies. And I have to persuade them that it is good management as far as they're concerned to follow policies which will achieve this. If we don't have a complete and holistic approach to this problem, each of us working within our little own pools are going to be very limited in the impact that we have. We have got to work together.
Okay, Una Goldsworthy.
I don't think it's particularly helped that we seem to have different parameters to work from. So, for example, for this year, social housing, all social housing has to hit Code 3 sustainability, but for private sector housing, it doesn't have to hit it until 2012, is it, something like that? So we're not. I don't know why that was the case. Surely we could have all brought it in together, and then we would have had some economy of scale in terms of the supply chain on it. But I think that's sort of that's one issue, but perhaps sort of taking Andrew's point about how it's about hearts and minds and getting people to come along with you, that perhaps what we were seeing, the end of last September-ish time, when the fuel costs really were going so high, then we did see a change of behaviour, didn't we? And then they've come back down again. But so it's almost like a false sense of security now that the prices that we've got now are going to stay, but we all know they're not. As we run out of fossil fuels and the prices are going to go up. And perhaps we need, as an industry, as a sector, to look at how we gear up to the real cost constraints that people are going to face. So we look at the fuel poverty angle. And I think that is one way of driving behaviour and driving people to look at how they cut their consumption. alongside those other measures that we need to take about designing buildings that are more sustainable. And as I said earlier, trying to go back to look at the existing buildings that we've got, which are, by a huge majority of all the buildings we'll have will be the ones we're already sitting in, the ones we're already living in. So we need to look at those too. So I think it's a mixture of those approaches.
Excellent. Hugh, would you like to come back as the question?
Yes, thank you, panel. Some very good answers there. Yes, holistic approach, absolutely. Working together, being truly collaborative. Yes, existing buildings, Una. The majority of our carbon footprint goes out through the fabric of our existing buildings, and I think the construction industry needs to be producing good solutions, and I think that is some serious work for us for the future. I think there are some other things not touched upon. We are going to experience quite some extremes of weather. I think in terms of wind, more of it. Our buildings are going to have to be stronger and more robust. Water, more of it at times and less of it at other times. And I think that's going to affect how we construct buildings, as well as understanding the flood end of things, and the aspect of it that really exercises me quite a lot is heat. We are going to have hotter, longer summers, we are told, and the timescales are immensely short here. We're talking about very close times in the future. We are going to be experiencing the sort of summer temperatures that they regularly get in the south of France. That's what's due to happen. And I think with a lot of our lightweight construction that we are currently that are currently building, I think people will die in some of the buildings that we are currently building. This as an industry, we need to get our design right, and the principles are very simple, actually, and it's very easy to get carried away with thinking about how we can generate our own electricity or whatever it is. The really important things is to get our basic building envelopes right, and I think the industry should be looking to make sure that our investment goes into that, really.
That's great. Do you want to come back on that one?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about the CRC, we beat a path to the DEFRA every other week and go and have a chat with them, and the CRC documents are going to come out, and it's not. But what's interesting when you read the details of CRC, particularly of retailers, is it doesn't include refrigeration gas.
Right.
And refrigeration gas, in terms of the UK's footprint, and ASDA's footprint, is 45% of our CO2 production. Those who don't know what refrigeration gas is all about, essentially you take a kilogram of liquid gas, and that's equivalent to about 3.5 tonnes of carbon, but we don't measure it. And we've lobbied to DEFRA to include that. And why have we done that? Because actually it makes your systems better. It makes them better in terms of their production, lower energy bill, actually saves us cash. But we're going nowhere with it. And it's like the insulating properties, we've got L2, L2A, L2B, etc. And yet we have a different code for the housing sector. My view would be, let's just have one code, let's make it robust, and let's push it out. And then what will happen is we'll design the buildings, and lo and behold, it'll be everyday practice. But we seem reluctant in this country. We're like this sort of, we dip our foot in the water, but we don't really sort of get in. And it's like our renewables. Our renewables strategy, and I was speaking again to the panel, that we have a plan. We've had a plan now for 5 years to build 135 metre turbines high. So there's 6 of them out of the UK, placed in our distribution centres. So fairly industrial climates. 6 years. Have we built any? No. We've had to do bat surveys, we've had to do pigeon surveys, we've got the MOD saying, that one of their planes will fly into them, etc., etc. And yet we don't have that environment in terms of the political environment that says, come on guys, let's get on with it. So here we have this sort of big stick. I'm on about, come on, let's have a look at what's the carrots, let's make the legislative process a lot easier. And it's like ground source heat pumps as well. We've just installed our first ground source heat pumps in Bootle in Liverpool. We paid £475,000 for that. We had to pay £375,000 to do the borehole to verify that the water we were extracting and putting back was better. The water we were putting back was better than the water we extracted. We had to pay out before we got the licence. This is ludicrous, and we need to move on as a country to say, well, tinker at your pleasure, but actually we need to move on.